Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. Hey, Thriving Farmers, Michael Kilpatrick here with yet another episode of the Thriving Farmer Podcast. And today I am interviewing Kate and Grant Estrade, and they are with Laughing Buddha Nursery, which originally was a retail garden shop and since 2003. And now they have shifted to doing more regenerative pasture-based livestock. And the farm is located actually about 60 miles north of New Orleans, and the shop is about 6 or 8 miles from the city center. So again, a little bit of difference there, but they have been making it happen, and they're here to tell us how that works. Welcome.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing? Well, Michael, I got to say, we met at Jordan Green's, one of his pastured pig conferences or seminars, and that was before that you had the podcast. And so I've been listening to your podcast religiously, and thank you for doing it. And you've been doing a great job. So it's been fun watching all that happen since I met you.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, I remember that was a really fun experience. And Jordan, just how they have broken down pig production, they do a really good job with that.
Yeah.
And it's good to see someone doing excellence in anything, but especially him, because he's spent so many years perfecting that system.
Absolutely.
So talk to us a little bit about, like, all right, you've been doing a couple different things along the way, but how did you get started all the way back in the beginning?
Well, in 2003, we opened up Laughing Buddha Nursery as a retail garden store. A couple of years after that, we started getting into manufacturing our own compost and garden soil blends.
Okay.
And, that was it. That was the business. And so we marched along with that for a while. And I had ended up partnering with an aggregate sand company to grow out the composting business. And, that went really well, and we grew, and everything was going fantastic. And I had an opportunity to sell my shares with it. My partners wanted to buy me out. So I went ahead and did that. And then at that time, we had already purchased 16 acres north of New Orleans for that, like, hey, one day thing or whatever we were thinking. And so effectively, after I sold my shares, I was kind of out of the job. We still had the retail store, but we were looking at doing something a little bit different. And Kate was working full time at Tulane University. And so we had started just playing around up at the property. And I said, you know what, I think it's time to do the farm project. And to go back a little bit further, we had played around with having some chickens at the store. We had played around doing guinea hogs. So we actually had like a boar and 2 sows at the store. So we were doing hobby level agriculture. And so we had gotten a little bit of a taste of that. And then, so we decided to pivot and to go for it. And so that's what we've been working on. And I believe we're going into our 4th year of having made that decision.
Okay.
Yeah. One thing it was sort of funny. We sold the breeding stock of those guinea hogs to a friend because we exceeded wanting to do it, in the yard deep litter at the store. And so Grant tells this nice, we made these decisions, but as soon as we bought the land, the friend who had the breeding stock was like, hey, do you want your pigs back? Like, I can just buy pigs from auction and raise them up. Like, I don't need to deal with this sparrowing.
Yeah.
And, so it's like sort of like that influenced it. And it's like, if Grant's already going to be going up there every other day to check on the pigs and their fence and their feeder and everything, may as well have some laying hens and see how the aerial predation is. And then half of our original 16 acres is wooded. And so very quickly, it's like, well, what are we going to do with this overgrown woody? And there was a lot of, saplings and viney things and stuff. So then the third species was the goats. And it was like one thing led to another. And it's like, well, we either need to like really do this or not do it. We kind of got our feet wet, and then it was like, it's time to like invest and really do it.
And then we also were looking at restarting up the compost and garden soil operation on my own. And so So we were doing that all at the same time. And so the current state of our composting business and the farm operation, they're literally like kind of growing up together, from those 4 years ago. So now we're full throttle, doing both right now.
All right. So how many acres do you manage now in total?
So we had originally purchased 16 acres,
Yep.
and this past summer we did a deal on the 44 acres next to us. And we got into, it was somebody who, wanted to sell the property. They were having a hard time to sell. So we worked out not a lease purchase, but a lease with the right to buy, with a pre-negotiated purchase price. And it's a 10-year lease, but the good faith deal was, hey, I'm gonna try to buy this from you in like 3 years. And that's gonna allow us to, pay for the irrigation, pay for the fencing, pay for the additional livestock. We can start cash flowing that property and actually pay the note on it. So now we're operating on the 60 acres.
Very nice. All right, let's talk a little bit about, okay, so then everything's produced up there, brought down to the store, and then you also, with that store, you're bringing in from other farmers. So talk to us a little bit about how the store operates.
Yeah, that's Kate's. Yep.
Yeah, so that's what I do all day, every day. So when we first started having product to sell, it was pork, pretty much like unseasoned pork cuts and eggs. And so we're like, well, we think that gardening customers, people who grow vegetables in their backyard, are probably a good customer base to start with. So we put a freezer and a fridge to have those products available. And then pretty quickly, I was like, well, I think we'd probably sell more and have an easier time like marketing and taking nice pictures and getting people to think of this as like a farmer's market stop, or just kind of using the framework that people already have when they're looking for local food, if we had produce too. So we started buying from another farm, basically what they had in excess of their CSA. And that, so of course we're making a margin on that. We're not just doing it as a charity, but the main motivation was, I think we'd sell more of our own products. Like variety begets more sales of everything. And that really just like snowballed. It proved to be true so much. So we started with our pork and eggs. We did broilers for a little while. So we had our chicken. Then we had the produce weekly. And then we started buying beef from another farmer before we had our own beef. And now it's like 20 plus producers with everything from dairy, still the chicken, beef when we don't have our own beef, lamb, fermented vegetables, jams with local fruit, local bakers and pasta. We produce rice here. Oh, wow. So we can, so it's really cool to be able to start to add more and more local stuff to have a bigger chunk of, and the more of a one-stop shop you can make it, then the sales of our own products have just stayed like right on the growth that we want them. And it's just like, there's like an integrity piece of it. If like you're asking people to buy local, it's like, well, we're putting our money where our mouth is and buying from producers. So I think like psychologically with our sales, that's helped because we like feel like we are doing what we preach too. And we're just big fans of teaming up with other farmers because we think that, we're like competing. We want to compete with like big box stores. We don't want to compete with each other. If we all team up, we can make a lot bigger dent than, just fighting for this small piece of the pie. If we can grow the pie together instead of like fighting over the piece of the pie that exists. So that's been huge for us. And it's become just a huge part of our business model.
Yeah, I can imagine. All right, I'm gonna start asking some technical questions because I'm about to start my own store. So talk to me about the POS system you're using to manage all the different sales.
Sure. So I'm a big believer in don't let the perfect get in the way of the good, and don't let like free, easy stuff like stop you from starting. So Grant was already using Square POS for the retail garden shop. So we obviously just used that. And then when I started doing these delivery hubs, we're like Grant said, we're 8 miles from downtown New Orleans. However, New Orleanians consider 15 minutes far. Yes. And especially given like traffic flows. And so we're, out where if you're coming out after work, if you're a working person, you're trying to get to us before 6, like it's really not that far, but in their minds it is because of traffic. And so you just have to go with that and you gotta kind of bring it to them. So at the same time we started buying from other farms, we started doing these drop points that a lot of farms do, like neighborhood. And I would just market to the specific neighborhood. So back then, like 2016, I think it started in 17. I just used Google Docs, like literally just Google Docs. There's no inventory control, nothing, you're just like deleting stuff as it sells out. And it was very like labor intensive, but it worked and it didn't cost anything. And it allowed us to start. And then, and I was sending blind copy emails as my email list grew to these different, but it worked. It got us to like where we are. And so then eventually I started using MailerLite to segment all my neighborhood lists and, have an actual more email platform. But we used Google Docs for way longer than I would have liked. And then eventually we got LocalLine. And we actually we started using LocalLine, or we bought it before, like long before we ended up being able to implement it, because by the time we implemented it, we had to input like 200 products that are changing every week, like as new produce comes in and new stuff. So it was just a lot of, it has saved so much time and been fantastic since we finally got it going. But it was like, how do you stop your sales, no matter how much busy work you're doing, to like make that transition? So, so that was the challenge. So we use LocalLine. It's just one catalog. People, see it's a public cart, and then they just select their pickup day and their pickup location. And it's not perfect of like, I really don't want people ordering that far in advance, because we're getting new deliveries every day. And there's certain farms that I trust of like, this is what I ordered, I can put it in the night before. And there's some that like sometimes show up without half the order. So I can't put it in before I receive it. So I'm not then scrambling to tell all the customers, like, we actually don't have butter, whatever. So, and then for walk-ups, we'll still use Square, but we just have to back out that inventory from LocalLine. Just a few clicks of like, they bought this and this, back it out.
Because they have an integration now too.
They do, like they have Stripe and Square that's the back end credit card processor. But until a couple of weeks ago, your only options with a LocalLine order were pay online in advance, pay cash or check, and I can mark it as paid, but you couldn't swipe in person, which was weird. Like that was like weird for customers to be like, wait, why can't you take my card? So we had to buy this specific terminal. It's not just like this swipe that you can plug into your phone or an iPad, but then I can just send that sale to the terminal and swipe their card. And so, it was great.
Very cool. And then you're still using MailerLite for all your emails.
Yes, and we love them. Like, I so recommend them. Their customer service is fantastic. Their analytics. We finally have a pop-up, like, sign up for your email, which neighborhood. Like, you can do that obviously with just your basic email list, but one of my staffers figured out how to have people sign up for the neighborhood they want, which is great, because it's like, if you're targeting them just for their location, you're less likely to make them feel like you're spamming them with just sending them everything. And so that's been really nice.
Very cool. We need to work better on our segmentation. And it just hasn't happened yet, but it's going to. So, yes.
One thing at a time. And don't let the perfect get in the way of the good.
All right. So talk to us a little.
I'll start calling you in the middle of the night and telling you need to work on that. Remind you.
Feel free. So talk to us a little bit about the compost, because that's something I find very fascinating, and it's something that doing good compost is hard to do. So talk to us a little bit about the process, what you put in that, and kind of what's your ingredients.
Sure. Well, the backstory on that I like to tell is in high school, when I was 14, 15, I started working at a pet store. I got into raising snakes. Started raising my own rodents to feed the snakes. And then I started my first business, which was selling those rodents to the pet store, that I worked. And it was a great experience because my dad was an accountant. So he helped me keep track of all the numbers. And so I remember getting my gross profit divided by hours I put in weekly. And I came up with how much I was making per hour doing mice and rats. And it was like triple what I was making at the pet store. And so, but the waste product of that, I threw into the corner. I started composting it. Now, keep in mind, I didn't know what I was doing. And so it all broke down. And And I made my first vegetable garden from that. And that was like the coolest thing to see, getting production out of something, turning the waste product into another type of product, which was the garden, the compost for the garden. And I grew stuff. And this is all when I was like 15, just keep in mind, I'm kind of doing this myself. And this is in the suburbs of the city. So that kind of got me hooked on the concept of composting. And so, with opening up the retail garden shop, I was getting constant calls, for bulk compost. And so that just one thing led to another. And so, it turned into a really good business. We started, I started just with a Bobcat, and we were getting horse stable sweepings. We were composting that, mixing it with a bought in pine mulch, pine bark to adjust the pH, and then doing the blends. And then we did that for a long time. With that partnership I said I had formed, they had the big toys in the property at the sand place. And, we had 10 acres of windrows, and, I think at any point we had probably 80 to 100,000 cubic yards of organic matter, different stages of composition. And, that model was, getting paid, the tippage fee, collecting it on the front end, composting, selling it, kind of. And it was totally cool. And we did a lot of big projects. We were getting orders that were like 20,000 yards of material, things of that. So that was quite a ride. And so now, after having done that large scale composting, we do it on a lower level now. And so we're back to just having a track skid steer loader. We still buy in pine bark from another outfit, just because they've got the grinder and the big screeners and stuff like that. And then, we're in a unique position. We deal with almost exclusively one company for our inbound waste material, and it's coffee grounds. And it's a facility that does cold brew coffee. And so they produce about an average of like 8 to 10 tons of coffee grounds a week. And so, that's a lot. And we pick it up. That material is so good. It's already a small particle size. Coffee grounds are just awesome. And so, it's a quid pro quo. We pick it up, and we don't charge them a tippage fee. And so we use a hauler now to pick that up. So I use a hauler, they go pick it up. It comes in super sack totes, and that's what we compost. And then we get that compost. We will sell it as is, but we'll also put it into a mixed blend, with pine bark that we buy in, and we put other amendments in it, like worm castings and crab meal and stuff. And then we also have the vermicomposting, which is then we get that compost, feed it to the red wigglers. And then the two products from that, of course, the red wigglers that we sell to homeowners for their own worm bins. And then we sell the worm castings as well. Okay, so let's talk worms for a bit, because you're doing that at scale. We've been gearing up on that this past year. It's, starting a soil business over again and starting a livestock farm has been crazy. I don't necessarily recommend that to most people. It's been quite a roller coaster
Luckily, the worms have hung on. And by the way, it needs to be said, so Grant started the store in 2003, and our first meeting was me going to his store as a customer to buy worms for my compost in 2010. So the worms got neglected in the whole, early farm years, but they hung on, and they're back up to production.
The friendships that I've made through the worms has been unbelievable, Michael. Yeah. So just on that, it's worth it,
I wish we had done this podcast before I came down, because I would have figured out how to get myself to see the worms.
You wouldn't have come to see us. It's all about the worms.
Yes. I know we've only been talking online for like 10 years, but I'm going to be 5 years. I want to come see your worms.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. And now that you really know about the worms.
Yes. Okay. So you got to dive into these worms for me.
Yeah. So we're starting to do it at scale. So right now we're doing batches. So we basically get 1 cubic yard of compost that's already gone through initial breakdown. It's gone through its heat cycle, so it's not going to put off any more heat. And then we inoculate it with a bed run portion of worms, which is going to be eggs, baby worms, juvenile worms, adult breeding worms. And we put that in there, and then we just let them do their thing. Right now, we're letting them be in there for about 4 months.
Okay.
Change seasonally. And at that point, so the bags are, say, 24 inches deep. Pretty much the top 16 inches is going to be very active with worms. And so that's been working out for us very well. And then we, after we kind of determine that the worm population has grown significantly, and they've gone through the material, then we'll go ahead and then we screen it. So we've got a trommel screen, and then we'll pass that through a 1/4 inch mesh. So our worm castings are anything 1/4 inch minus, and then everything that drops through the screen is going to be castings. And then everything that goes out the end is going to be all the overs. It's going to be all the big chunks of mulch that we have mixed into that bedding, along with all the adult worms. And then we'll get all that together, and then we'll re-inoculate new beds with it.
Gotcha. So you lose all your eggs and babies into the finished vermicompost.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, when we do that initial screen, we know that that's happening. A lot of folks will screen at 1/8 of an inch.
Okay.
It's just you end up having to screen it a couple times.
So
the labor on it is much more difficult, and also when the customers buy those worm castings from us, they might be in a bag for a couple of months. We'll store them in super sack totes, or we'll bag them in the cubic foot bags. And, the whole time that's happening, there are live worms in there, not a lot, but there's some. So that kind of tells me that there's still healthy biological activity that ends up giving the customer just a really good worm casting product. And so I'm okay with that. So that the quality of the casting coupled with the minimum labor, it just makes sense to do it that way.
Okay, so is this in super sacks that you're doing this? You're putting the yard in there, then putting what kind of bags? Okay.
So right now, just this past year, we actually started using the super sack totes to raise the worms in for the vermicomposting.
Yeah.
Then for the worms that we raise, where we actually harvest the worms for sale, we use trash cans or drums or whatever, because that type of container creates anaerobic bottom and sides. And so the worms truly stay at the top of those vessels. And so when we go to harvest the worms for sale, all those worms are right at the top. And so they're really easy to pull out. And then we'll sell those in like 4-gallon bed run portions. And so we have a vermiculture system that we're doing. And then we've got the vermicomposting system that we're doing.
And is all that being done under shade?
Yeah. So right now we've got enough trees to where we're all natural canopy.
Okay.
In any shade houses. But if anybody wanted to do something like that, just like it's just as easy as to throw up a greenhouse, you can throw up a shade house, and that works out real well. And so that natural tree canopy keeps it cooler than the shade house. And so that's what we're doing right now.
Very cool. Yeah. All right. That kind of gives me an overview. We really want to do that here because we obviously have all the mushroom blocks. And I hear that the worms love the mushroom blocks, all the mycelium. So love to be able to kind of set that up.
Yeah, that's a big indicator. So that compost that we're feeding them, the reason that I use hardwood mulch as the fluffing material is because it's so fungally active. Pine bark doesn't really grow, fungus like hardwood does. And so we look to make sure that there's a healthy, not necessarily mycorrhizal or anything, but just a healthy mycelial growth in there, because that is a huge food supply for the worms, and they'll blow through those worm blocks for you for sure. Yeah. It's a great composting thing for a farm to do, because just like you've got the tractor, we've got a small tractor that we use as a little 25 horse 79 Yanmar that we use for like more of a farm vehicle to pull tractors and stuff, but having the Bobcat there, we use the Bobcat for the composting, for blending soil, for putting out hay, for digging the ditches and the swales. I mean, it's just, we use it for everything. So we have the equipment already. And so that's one of the biggest things that you need to do the worm farming. You don't need shredders and grinders and a real capital intensive equipment to get started in something like vermicomposting.
Yeah. All right, cool. Yeah, that's really easy. I could definitely get that set up here. And I've got enough woods that I can make it happen. We don't have a lot. It's very valuable space, but yeah, I can make it happen. All right. So you guys got a lot to manage. I mean, that's, and then especially because they're so far apart, what's your split between like up at the farm and then down near at the store?
So Grant kind of manages the farm and the staffers that we have at the farm.
Yeah.
And then I manage the store. And so someday I'll get to where I'm not going in as much. But right now I pretty much we're open Tuesday through Saturday.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty much going in Tuesday through Friday minimum, sometimes Saturday too. But our egg washers at the farm and the way that I staff the store now, it's like, I try not to be in a rush in the morning. So if we're kidding, I can go check the kids farrowing, I can check the sows and do my thing that is my role. But I don't do chores or anything really. Make sure that between me and the farmhand, we get the eggs washed that we need for the day. And then I'm usually at the store till close and then come back. So, I mean, it is a trek. But I don't know, that's just the way it is right now. And then Grant, he can talk about this, but he'll come in for soil deliveries, but he's more managing the staffers. And there's some days where he's, solo at the farm still.
Yeah.
So,
The hour and 10-minute drive, it blows my mind because literally our retail store will be 10 seconds across the street. So, but yeah.
Right.
I mean, the goal is that we're training. I used to do all the delivery hubs myself pre-COVID.
Yeah.
So I was, again, still coming in much later in the day and then having my staff pack up the orders. Sometimes I'm helping them depending on our staffing, sometimes not. And then driving off with the truck with the coolers. And for the early years, and I still feel this way to some degree, we have this unfair advantage of already having an established business that we've paid taxes on and everything in a area. And so in the early years, having that close relationship with your customers is invaluable, and getting the feedback and being the face of it for them. So now I do have someone who does the delivery hubs on kind of a little commission. We're going to be talking to someone about home deliveries, separate companies, outsourcing that. But yeah, it's just the nature of it. I don't think our sales would be where they were if we didn't have this presence in the metro area. And so it's a trade-off of getting to where we want to be sales wise. And then, the more that we establish the systems and what do you do when this goes wrong, XYZ, have these protocols, then I can hire someone, at a higher rate and trust them to manage the store, and I can be doing more things from the farm. But
absolutely, it's all about those stages in the business.
Yes,
for sure. And with the back and forth, we're pretty cognizant of a go loaded, come loaded, mantra. And so a lot of errands are run in between the store and the shop, grocery store, hardware store, fuel for the farm. I don't go into town and typically unless I have a soil delivery, and then we charge a delivery fee on top of the soil. So we try to work all that in as much as possible. So even though it may not sound as efficient, it really turns out to be, I think, an efficient use of our time. And then little perks our rental freezer is literally 4 miles from our retail store.
Nice.
So we've got pallets of product stored in their deep freeze, and it's nothing for Kate to go run down there and have them pull the pallet so she can restock the store. So there's definitely some really nice things about having that store in the city for sure.
And we did look at, we have thought about selling it and trying to do the operation all from the farm. But one major challenge, the way the model has grown, is would all these other farms deliver to us up there? And, and then you just still have the drive time for the delivery hubs and stuff. So having it is what it is for right now.
Yeah.
Because they have other places they sell to, and then also restaurants in New Orleans. New Orleans, tons of restaurants, right? And so those farms that are selling us, a couple of cases of whatever produce, they're already coming into town. So for them to drop off to them, us is nothing. But to ask them to come out to where the farm is located, that's going to be a dedicated trip for them. And they wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah. Well, then there's nothing like being in the middle of everything.
Totally agree with that.
Yeah.
So how do you keep track of, do you have any task management system, or how do you make sure you focus on what's most important?
I'll go first, and Grant has some thoughts too, but I will say there's nothing like just needing to focus on the right thing to force you to sell. We have to sell stuff to keep going. And so I just compare it to my last job, I was a fundraiser for a major university, and just summoning the motivation. Like I would, just like think myself into circles of like workflow. And really it was just like, my heart wasn't in it. And so now that it's like, this is our business, we need to sell stuff to survive. It's amazing. Like how, of course you can still get bogged down in the weeds, but I personally just have my things that I have to do every day. Like on Mondays, I have to send the email for the week of like this and, communicate with all the other vendors of what we're getting in the next day. And then later in the week, as the other ones approach, I have to do that, and we have to pack all the orders for the day. Like we have to fulfill those things. And then everything else is like, if there is time. And so I just use something where I just use notes in my phone for my running list. Or I set reminders of things that are like minor one-time things, but I can't forget, like to pay this or do that, or whatever. And then Grant is one of the best prioritizers that I know. Like he's very good at, and he can talk about his methods of like seeing the long term and seeing the big picture and not getting overwhelmed of like, oh God, it's pouring rain and we really should move this or that. And, he can sort of see the long term. And why don't you talk about how you do that?
Yeah.
You're better at it than me.
Yeah. So, well, I'm a goal setting, junkie, that's all I think about. Right? As somebody said in the past, I have a goal when I go to the bathroom, so that's how I think.
3 pages of Stockman Grass Farmer.
Right. So, I'm a big fan of, Stephen Covey and a lot of stuff that he has, and he's got that little diagram of, urgent, not urgent, important, not important. And, you cross those together, so if it's not important and it's not urgent, then it has to go to the end of the list, however emotional it is or not, like you have to prioritize. And a lot of that stuff is discipline, based, but at the farm, on the farm side, and just for everybody knows what we're dealing with every day. Right now we've got 3 flocks of 400 birds. So we've got 1,200 layers, we're farrow to finish on the hogs. We've got 24 sows. We're also selling piglets to other farms, as well as finishing for our own sales. We've got a breeding herd of meat goats with about 25 nannies or so. And then we're finishing we've got 12 head of beef at the farm right now. And then, like the pigs, we want to finish like 200 pigs a year. The birds, we're happy at the 1,200 right now. The beef, we want to finish like 24 beef a year and sell that. And this is all direct retail sales. So we're not selling wholes and halves. I mean, we're selling pork chops and 1 pound, packs of sausage type of deal. And then we've got the garden soil, and all that business on top of it. So right now, we're starting to get into a really nice flow. We've got regular staff at the store. And so right now it's pretty much, from start time at 7:30 in the morning till about 11:30 is going to be chores. There's lunch, and then there's the special project, and so a lot of that may be bagging the compost and garden soil into cubic foot bags. We do have a mixer blender, bagging machine. And so we may end up, running bags for 2 hours and then doing the evening chores, which is pretty much, collecting all the eggs at the end of the day, on all 3 flocks. And so that's pretty much an everyday, 7 days a week, kind of a deal with that. And then when I've got staff at the store,
at the farm,
when I've got staff at the farm, I plan out my days pretty strategically on like what I need to do. And, right now we're still doing construction. So I'm still putting in water line and, doing the fencing and stuff like that. So when I've got staff at the store, we have a morning meeting, we've got a board, I got a map at the farm. We kind of have a brief meeting in the morning. This is the task list. This is what to look out for. This is what we did yesterday. Give them a heads up on that. And then they roll, and then I roll, and then we'll keep in touch throughout the day. And so we're finally starting to get into that fixed everyday pattern at the farm for sure. So.
Yeah. And then for all the little things, do you like to keep whiteboards or just running lists as well?
Yeah. So right now we're doing a whiteboard. So I've got, if you can imagine a whiteboard with different graphs, like Monday through Sunday. And then on the left, column, you've got, pigs, layers, goats, worms. And so we can say, okay, is there a worm chore that we need to do on Tuesday? And so we're trying to break that whole week down into days, times, and by different animal or different stock. That makes sense. So that's a big whiteboard that's in the barn that we're doing. Another whiteboard, like I said, has a map of the farm. And just this morning I wrote all the butcher dates that we have lined up for the next. So I've got all of our beef dates when we need to load, our pork dates when we need to load. And then we haven't written it down yet. We usually communicate by text on the egg. So we're washing because we've got the egg washer. We can kind of like put things off a little bit. So we're washing to what we're going to use for that day. And so, when staff comes in at 7:30, we make that the first task is to wash the eggs for that day. We'll shoot them a quick text and be like, hey, we need 60 dozen in flats for our bakeries that we sell to. And then we need like 40 dozen in retail cartons. And so that's just a quick text depending. And then we do that on the fly because we don't know what the orders are bringing in, from local line. So that's on the fly as well. So a lot of communication throughout the day with all parties involved for sure.
Okay. So then are you store the eggs dirty so they stay the longest, and then you just wash. And do you wash with a machine or is it by hand?
Yeah. So so when we collect, we use milk crates with the plastic, stackable, egg trays, right? So we collect directly into those. They go into a, old reefer box I salvaged for a couple $100. It's got a window unit in it, with shelf.
But not a cool bot. We just keep it like 65, not like,
right.
not like a,
just to get like the field heat off of it and keep them, by the elements, all that kind of stuff. And then we did purchase a power scrub egg washer. I think we got that in this fall and June. Oh, June. Okay. So last summer we got it in, and it is like, I'm in love with that
life-changing.
thing, right?
Is that the one that I saw at Polyface?
It is.
Yeah.
And
that was mind blowing just how efficient that was. And one person could run it very easily. And I was like,
Will did, like, our farmhand did 45 dozen in like an hour 20 or something by himself this morning.
And if you really want to crank the eggs, Michael, you could have 4 people working on that machine. I mean, you could have, it's got enough. Yeah. We set it up to where we can rock it if
like pre-rinse, someone pre-rinsing, someone loading, 2 people cartoning, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. After we get this retail store going, we build out this farm, we're going to buy the farm next door, which is 8 acres. And then after that, we're going to buy like a multi-100 acre pasture based farm. So, I mean, my wife she shakes her head, but I'm like, but I know what I want to do.
I can see it now.
Yes. But we'll hire hopefully hire my brother back here he's out in Oklahoma, but hire him back to manage that because he loves animals. And then
nice.
Yeah, and then you'll be in the same scenario, kind of. You'll have your store right there in the town area, and I think that's a real smart thing to do.
Yeah, well, that's the first store, because then we're going to have second store, third store, fourth store.
Yeah, exactly.
World domination.
We'll be looking for your franchise rights when they come available in Louisiana for sure.
Yeah, I can give you guys first access.
Thank you. Yeah, you heard it here, folks.
All right, so let's talk about farming's tough. What would you say the hardest part of being a farmer is? What's the hardest thing you have done while farming?
Kate, you want to?
So mine's going to be really different from Grant. I think mine is to do with just animal losses, it's one thing, it's like one set of feelings to get them to fulfill their destiny and butcher and stuff like that. And that is a difficult set of feelings that I like embrace. And I think that our society is like lacking in those connections. And even though it can be hard, like it's good for us to face that. But I think the way that I was exposed to the idea of regenerative farming and stuff, it can be so idyllic that you're like, if you just get them outside and off of the drugs and on good feed and rotationally grazing, like there will be no issues. Like you're solving all their like health issues. And I mean, that seems so naive now. And of course I didn't think that was like 100%. Yeah. But I think the reality of like when somebody who's growing tomatoes, like loses these beautiful ripe tomatoes to like a fluke hailstorm, like you're going to feel frustrated and you lost financially, but you don't feel like guilt that you did wrong by the tomato, you know? So for me, that's been like a huge learning curve of like, and what are the lines that, you know, like how much intervention do we believe in? If the breeding stock, it's different than just the stockers, because the silver lining of some animal that doesn't do well in your program that dies before you can cull them, you know, is that they culled themselves and they took out some genetics that weren't ideal for your program. But yeah, so for me, that's been like one of the, and I think I've come a long way, but, and we're also seeing like the benefits of our choices a couple years in, you know, just the resilience and the, we don't worm our goats regular, like we have no one on a regular pharmaceutical regimen. And for the goats on wormers, that's like one of the most difficult. But you know, letting some of them go, culling hard, we have really tough, like resilient stock now. And so that helps. But there's always some unforeseen issue that can be hard. So I think that for me, and then Grant may talk about this more, but just the, like, you know, the financial risk and kind of going all in and also working with your spouse, and it can be very intense. Like the whole thing can be super intense, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah. What would you say?
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, when we tell people that we're doing this and they say it's, oh, farming is hard, I do push back on that, because, you know, any goal that you set for yourself, I don't care what it is, if you're going to be an attorney or a doctor or open up a store selling flip-flops, you know, it doesn't matter. Like if you say, hey, I'm going to do this and I want to be good at it, whatever that is going to be hard. You know, I mean, that there's no such thing as like an easy achievable goal. And so, I mean, if you tell, you know, if you go up to a nurse and you say, hey, I'm a farmer, my job is hard, your job is easy. I mean, just like, you know, get ready to run away from them, you know, like they're going to, and so I really think that, you know, you need to go into, whenever you go into a new endeavor and do something like this, you need to understand that being hard is part of it. So don't be surprised that it's hard, if that makes sense. And so, so knowing that it's going to be difficult is very, very important. The folks that tell me, oh, it's so hard. And I'm like, well, did you think it was going to be easy? You know, like who told you that any of the stuff was going to be easy? I think that might be, you know, just a misnomer or some made up thing that people kind of get themselves into. And so, you know, but the benefit of that is then you achieve, and then you feel really good about yourself. And that's when you're accomplished and things of that nature. So I mean, I don't want to make it seem like farming is easy, but I also want to make sure that everybody knows that, you know, whatever else you may be doing is also not easy. And so, so that's something to kind of keep in mind. And, you know, that will mentally kind of keep you, your perspective set. You know, you're not going to get into, oh my God, it's so hard and I got to quit, you know, because anything that you try to do, of course, is going to be hard, and not quitting is going to be the hard part, you know. Now,
just hard in different ways. Like for me, I would choose this hard to like the 9 to 5, struggling to have motivation. Cause I just think that is such a horrible thing to feel as a human, you know, like trying to summon some energy to do something you don't want to do.
Yeah. Make 6 more sales calls.
Yeah. And just for why?
Yeah. And that goes into knowing yourself too. I mean, you know, like I love the fact that farming is a physical job. I mean, like, you know, when I hit the couch, you know, in the evening, I mean, you've been mentally challenged the whole time. That feels great. You've been physically challenged, and that makes your body feel strong and feels good. And so it's, you kind of are hitting all the really cool things that makes you feel really good during the day. Yeah. Because for me, working a 9 to 5 in an office is just about as just like would be like torture for me. I mean, I'd come at 6 o'clock and I would be like just mentally exhausted. I wouldn't even be able to function, you know, and I know that about myself. And so I enjoy okay, I got to go run fencing for the next 4 hours this afternoon. And when I'm done, I'm going to go eat a big dinner, you know, that's a really cool afternoon, you know? So, but having, you know, said all of that, you know, there are obviously challenges. And, the financial challenge is very, very difficult. And, Kate kind of came in, this was kind of Kate's first, business venture. And so she's going through all that stuff. And, I'll share with you that during the recession, I had to sell my house and move back in with my parents. I had the retail store open for 5 years. I had bought a house, things were like looking cool. And then like, bam, I had 2 Bobcats, I literally loaded it and returned it to the dealer, and turned it back in. And then I was able to keep one. I had to, and then I sold I dumped the house and moved back in with my parents, which I don't recommend any adult, to ever move back in with their parents. And so that was a challenge. And so, yeah, it was a total nightmare. And so, you will go through, those cycles, and that's part of it, that, going through those challenges and cycles of having a business. And so, it's a total roller coaster now. And as you know, with COVID, there's been a boom for direct to consumer farms, and we were set up for it. We were already doing the pre-orders and all that kind of stuff. But, my deal is that we have to assume that those sales were a flash in the pan, and we can't count on that happening again this year. And so we're doing a lot of work to make sure that, we're getting new customers, that we're keeping in touch with existing customers. And so we're working our plan as if the COVID sales boom never did happen. And so, you really need to stay attuned to all that stuff for sure.
Yeah. I'm already seeing some folks saying that they're from the COVID bump, they're back down 50%.
Yeah.
And, and we'll see. I mean, my hope is that we've opened up a whole brand new category for new customers, and we made it super simple for people with the home delivery now. And so that will increase the sales, but I'm also cognizant that people are going to go back to convenience.
Yeah,
for sure. And then and Kate mentioned, we're talking with a contract company to do our home deliveries. We'll be meeting with them, this upcoming Sunday afternoon. And we have to make those moves. We have to do that because we need to make sure that that we're offering a convenient product. We need to do, the opposite of people going out of their way. I mean, we really need to bring these products to them, because let's face it, the future of retail and commerce is, people ordering through an app or through a website. That's
Grubhub.
Yeah. I mean, that's the trend, and you can't fight that. You just have to roll with it for sure.
Yeah. How can we make it so that basically we can text our customers a link when the store is open, they click on it, they don't have to log in, it already knows who they are. They can just click checkout, and it shows up on their door 24 hours or 48 hours later.
Yeah, exactly. But then you also need to go heavier on normal communication as well. I mean, so, calling customers, leaving notes. Kate has more interaction with the customers these days, but telling them, hey, we really appreciate your business. You've been an important customer to us, and really communicating with your customers on a human level as well. I mean, we can't ever give that up. That's always going to be important, no matter what the technology is.
And that's how you can beat out any scaled company, because they cannot do the type of personal interaction that we can.
Totally. Yeah. And it's genuine. It's like, sometimes I just have this wave of like, wow, this person has been buying from us week in and week out for years at this point. And they kind of have to go out of their way. Like, it's not normal to, it's not like walking into a grocery store. And so they obviously are getting a good product, I hope. And that's why they come back. But taking the time to be like, hey, like, today was a little bit of a rough day, and I saw your order come in, and it just means so much. And I know you're getting a good product, but like, I hope you understand like how much we appreciate it, and it just saying that, regardless of their response, is huge for your mindset, and just going at it from a perspective of gratitude, I think is really cool. So, yeah. Like, there's no one at Whole Foods that could pull that off, because it doesn't matter to them, like the individuals that are fulfilling the orders.
We actually, every once in a while, we'll get a pizza from Whole Foods, just because Their actual pizzas are not bad.
Yeah.
They're pretty good pizzas. And this last time, up until this last time, there was this guy that was working there, and literally I was trying to figure out every way how I could hire him because he was so good. But last time he wasn't there, and it was another guy, and you could tell the guy just literally didn't care. The pizza was burnt, the service was bad. You're right. It's just a job.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like if I was spending a lot of money with a company, like a small company, if they said that to me, I mean, that's amazing. Like that's exactly what you want, because you are doing it because of the product, hopefully is the main reason, but you're buying into the story as well, and what the product kind of represents. And so to be seen and to be thanked and for that is, I would hope, like a big deal to them.
Oh yeah, we're getting feed from a non-GMO feed company in Georgia, Rasaka Sun Feed. They've been fantastic, and the delivery guy is great. And he came to deliver at the farm the other day, and he was wearing like a brand new hat that obviously they had made. And I go, "Hey, where's my hat?" And he goes, "Oh, yours is in the truck." And I was like, I was joking with him, but like, yeah, okay, they thought about bringing me a hat. That's a typical sales, men kind of thing to do. And I was just kind of joshing a little bit on that. But yeah, I mean, that makes me feel good. They remembered to bring me a hat. That was pretty cool. So, it doesn't take much to make people feel appreciated and happy.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's those little things, like how can you build those little things into your systems that make it really easy, make it happen more frequently?
Totally. I pulled a report. I haven't really fulfilled like all of it yet, but I just, at the end of the year, I pulled a report of our top customers, and it really wasn't super surprising who they were, because it's like week in, week out, and I know them and already feel this sense of appreciation. But for some of them, seeing the totals, I was like,
yeah,
so I would like to like have some kind of, one of my goals this year is have some kind of built-in like customer appreciation. And I got a little hung up on like, should I make them a gift, like a food gift that we can't sell, like render them some lard, or like, I got a little like, tied up in the what. And I'm like, no, actually, I think it's just telling them, whether it's like a handwritten note or an out of the blue text or something, like, because that really, the sentiment I think is more important than anything. Or just giving, like a lot of them, I just end up giving them something they buy frequently, like as a bonus, but I would love that. And I would love to know more people that are doing stuff like that. Cause I think like really taking care of your top customer base, they can go from being really happy with your product themselves and continuing to buy to like preaching the gospel of your business to their friends and stuff.
Yeah. And the flip side too, though, is if those people that are spending a lot of money with you ever feel like you take them for granted, they can turn into the quickest detractors. And they can just, go to somebody else and just now start. I had that experience with a company that we actually worked really, really closely with. I was doing a lot for them. This was in the early stages of our online company here. And I was going above and beyond. The things I was doing was crazy. And they basically just was like, treated me like I didn't matter. Yeah. And I basically went from their biggest proponent to, don't work with that company. They're not any good.
Yeah.
Right. And I was the guy singing their praises. So
totally. You got to know who your cheerleaders are and take care of them. And to that note, our top customer sales wise, like sometimes you got to, like, we're not the customer's always right.
Yeah.
Cause sometimes you just really run into issues and can get pushed around. But within reason, sometimes you just have to, even though you're right, you're going to let them be right, because I would not want to lose them as a customer. So there was some like discrepancy of whether they huge meat order and staff were loaded into their car, whether they got beef bones. It was like $30 worth or something. And they were convinced that they didn't. This was weeks later, staffers convinced that they did. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to refund them, because like, I don't make an issue of this when they're spending what they're spending, and they're such lovely people, and they're not like doing this because they're trying to pull one over. They genuinely misplaced them, or we were wrong. Like it was so.
There's always that chance.
Yeah. So it's like, if they're worth it, like you just can eat that and it's okay. For sure.
With that, I'd like to stop and take a quick break. In a minute, we'll be back with Grant and Kate. Hey, thriving farmers, have you checked us out on YouTube lately? We have a bunch of new content there, including a few rants by me. I want to tell you, you don't want to miss them. I actually go rant about, some of the problems I see in our space and some of the challenges I see farmers facing. So go check that out. We've got instructional videos over there as well. Talk about setting up our new farm here in Ohio and all the steps we're going to do that, as well as just tutorials and tips on best practices for all sorts of things on the farm. So go ahead, check over at Growing Farmers on YouTube and see the new content we put together for you. I am back with Grant and Kate from Laughing Buddha Nursery. All right, so talk to me about, let's say there's a magic reset button. You could go back to the beginning of your business and do something different. What would you do different?
Well, we talked about this last night. I think this is actually a really great example. Initially, Grant, we didn't put any perimeter fence in. And initially, Grant, his reaction to thinking about this question was, oh yeah, I would definitely go back and do the perimeter fence first, make life easier, have cattle, and feel more. But then a few minutes later, he pointed out, but it's like, we didn't know if it was going to work. And so there's something to be said for going at it a little bit gradually so that you don't lose all your, it's like this, we got no traction. So it's like, we had a hard time kind of thinking, okay, what would we have done differently? Because obviously in hindsight, knowing that the business model is working and we've got this sales growth that we like and things are going good, we would spend less time trying to get net fencing in the woods and just clear laneways and put perimeter fence up. But there's such an upfront infrastructure expense to that it's like, then you have this fence and what are you going to do? Sell the fence with the property or something if it doesn't work out. So do you have any more thoughts on that since we talked about it?
Yeah, there's been little things I shouldn't have bought that ATV. I should have bought that little tractor right in the beginning, so I think there were some small equipment purchases that were probably, kind of dumb because I didn't know what I didn't know, kind of a thing. And like I said, we never planned on it, scaling. I mean, right now I'm not going to say what our gross revenue is, but we're in the multiple six-figure, realm. And, we didn't know if it was going to scale to this. So yeah, we were playing it kind of safe with some of our initial investments, with what we were doing. But I think if we really had to put our finger on it, something tangible, I think we would have started with working with other farms earlier. I think understanding the value of our brick and mortar retail location, I think maybe we should have started turning that into more of a little grocery store before, a little bit earlier. Yeah. And I remember Kate had brought a case of pickled vegetables and I'm like, what is this? Kate's like, I'm gonna try to resell them. And I'm like, don't worry about doing that. And I was kind of poo-pooing her idea a little bit, of course, which I was totally wrong, 110%. And so I think we should have done that earlier is something that I would have liked to have seen. And I love working with other companies, and I've made the most money professionally in my life when I have teamed up with other people. And sometimes I forget that really is the way to do business. So yeah, I think
that's actually probably pretty good advice just in general with farms, because it's like, the marketing is so huge. And so it's like, if you can't sell, don't start producing. It's like a lot of times people get their production up before they really have the sales to match it. And then they run into trouble of having too much stuff. And the other thing that I found is I'm very proud of our practices and what we do, but you just inherently are going to not want to toot your own horn too much. And so one side benefit of selling other people's stuff is you can brag on them all day without having a humility issue. I kind of forgot that. That was really big. In the beginning is I could just, these farms who are growing organic produce or raising broilers, and I don't want to raise broilers on pasture with our wet slope, it's like in some ways it can be easier to push somebody else's product because there's no bragging element you have to run into.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and
it takes time to get a breeding herd of pigs and all that takes time. That's why people start in the livestock world with broilers so much. They're the radishes of
Exactly. Yes. 21 days.
So yeah. So like, if if you have other people's stuff to sell while you're getting your feet under you with production, it can just be very good practice for flexing those muscles and making sure you're building that customer base. And then like, boom, when you do have your product, you've already developed these relationships and developed this customer base, and it all can sell. Right away.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike, to segue into that, a little bit with aggregation, Michael, I think I was listening to one of the podcasts you just put out this past week or something, and you made a comment saying farmers markets have trained farmers to only sell their own product and not people's product. And I think that if there's any like totally negative thing that farmers markets have done for our business, it is that mindset. And I think it's a real shame because, imagine walking into a Walmart or, Kroger, you can only sell your own house labeled product. I mean, they're going to think you're crazy, and I really think that working with other farms is going to be the future. I mean, we got distribution issues, logistical issues, storage issues, retail sales issues, how to get it to the customer issues. And so I mean, to form a network of other farmers, I mean, it's almost like creating a separate economy in a way. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's got a lot of potential. It's very potent, and I think it's the future of the local farming scene for sure. So.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that. And again, there are those people like us who love that retail customer aspect and those farmers that don't. And it allows those farmers to do what they want to do and sell us those to us at a reduced price and let them get paid well for what they do. And then us to take the cut and put the retail on side of it. So,
and when we're dealing with other farms too, we don't and we tell them, look, we got to add a margin onto it. So, but we're not browbeating them for a price. I mean, if they give us a price, we put our margin on it, we'll try to sell it. If it sells, it's a win-win, right? And if we don't sell it, we may come back to them and say, hey, maybe we need to change the price point.
But we've never really had to do that.
Yeah. And so it's really, they're getting what they want and we're getting what we want. And it's a really cool thing.
They tell us the price, we add the margin. That's it. Gotcha. And really early on when we started doing this, some of our staff at the shop would get hung up on like, oh, this customer mostly ordered produce and not much of your product, and I'm like, I don't care. The margin is the same.
Yeah.
Because we have our hourly labor rate worked into the cost, that we figure out, but the profit margin is the same. Essentially, there's maybe some like extra wiggle room worked into our products of like, what if the mortalities on this round of chicks is higher, or what if, these little contingencies, or what if like our feed price goes up or something. But for the most part, it's the same margin that we add on our own products as the other ones. And the difference is just that when we sell something, we get paid for our labor to produce that product at the same time.
Yeah, we're cash flowing more internally on our own products. Yeah, for sure. So.
Let's talk about team. So you've got obviously on-farm team and you've got the store team, very different people. I'm sure you're hiring for both places. What would you say is the ideal person for your store?
So before I answer that, this triggered me to remember that the other thing we talked about doing differently is building a team earlier. It's of course challenging to have the cash flow to support a larger payroll, but
yes.
And I think you also kind of meant the team being the external team of working with other farms earlier, but yes, not going it alone. So for the shop, I have had, I do all the hiring for the shop. And one thing that I've learned recently is for the foreseeable future, I'm going to be the manager in one way, shape, or form. I need a job. We're not to the scale where I'm doing something else, or I'm able to do everything from home or whatever. So I have to find people that are okay with the bulk of their job being packing and answering the phone. Sometimes the true believers that talk about helping our business grow and being a manager and stuff are actually not the right fit, because I can't really promise them that anytime soon. So one really funny example is because when I put out a store associate position, it still involves some gardening stuff and loading people with the forklift for soil. like, depending on the time of year and like the economy, I'll get like real estate agents and like master's degrees and like, I'm like, I only can pay, X amount.
Yeah.
But one night early in like when everything blew up in the pandemic, this before we got the egg washer, sales are like, experiencing that huge initial spike.
Yeah.
I was like, Grant, like I got back after our delivery hub, busiest ever for this particular location. I was like, we have so many eggs to wash. Like we can't do it tomorrow with the staff that we have and fulfill the orders that we have.
This was before we got the egg washer.
Yeah, this was in March and we got it in June.
Yeah.
So it was like 9:00 at night. He's at the farm. I'm at the store. I'm going to stay at his parents' house, like a mile from the shop that night. So I wasn't like driving back. And he's like, we just need to hire a high schooler, like just to wash eggs, like, because our staff was doing it in the downtime between packing orders and everything. And I'm like, well, how are you going to find that person? Like, I need someone tomorrow. Like, how are you going to find a high schooler? Well, so in true Grant fashion, like he just goes on Facebook on his personal page.
No, I said, I'm going to find somebody tonight.
and he did. He put it on his, his personal Facebook. One of our friends / customers tagged her babysitter, who was a senior in high school, and Grant talked to her and she came the next day. And so initially we just used her for egg washing. Then we had some other staff changes, things, and so then I started using her to pack orders. She is vegan, but she's not like anti-meat. She just personally is vegan. And like, normally I never would have thought to hire a high schooler who's vegan, no less, to pack meat orders. But she was like, attention to detail, focused, like no baggage. She's not like, trying to make this a huge part of her identity and her career. She's just there to work and then she leaves it at work and done. And so that taught me something about like, sometimes you just need to be super blunt and like, and so that was a fluke. And like, if I had interviewed her through the normal process, I probably wouldn't have hired, I don't know. But it definitely taught me something about like, we need just like people to march and take their marching orders and do it to some degree. And for specialty things, like one of my staffers is on commission with the delivery hubs. So we currently are paying people more than we ever have. And I have somebody else who works as a clerk, but also has her website rate to help us with the website. So in some ways, we're specializing, finding ways to have people that like fulfill their strengths. But in other ways, it's like, I need those people. And then below them, layered onto them, I need the order packers. And I need to be crystal clear that like, you're an order packer. And of course we would be stupid if you are increasing a sales exponentially, not to like find ways for you to grow within our company. But the reality is if you do that and move up, I'm still going to have to hire an order packer. So like, how much does that really help me? So that was just like a paradigm shift for me about staffing. And right now we have Ella Rose, the high schooler, is in college now, sadly, and she has to be in her bubble, but she comes back on breaks. And like, so she worked for 4 or 5 weeks or 6 weeks or something over Thanksgiving and Christmas because they ended the semester earlier because of COVID to not have them returning from travel. So it's like, if I have her for the foreseeable future coming in at times when other people want to take off, like that's still great to me. But yeah, we have 3 part-time people at the store, packing orders, talking to customers, that kind of thing. And then we've got 2 part-time people at the farm. And definitely different. So far, we haven't really cracked the nut on finding people closer to the farm, because we'll get these people that are interested in farming and live in New Orleans. And like, it's the situation we have now works out well. But in the past, it's like, they think they don't mind the drive,
but they do.
They start to, and it's like this whole thing of like, how do we crack in to people that are closer to us? We've called like the ag departments at some high schools around us have that, and just nothing has stuck quite yet. But yeah.
So, but we're real lucky with the folks that are at the farm. One guy, what he does, he works Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday at the farm, and then he stays over like that Monday night and that Thursday night. So that way he's taking and then we invite him over for dinner, no pressure if he wants to hang out with us or not. And so we try to make it attractive that way, so he enjoys that, and he's got it, and they'll crash in a, travel trailer. So they got their own place, kind of deal. And then one gal we just hired, she's actually pulling a couple of days at a nearby farm that we're friends with, and they're letting her stay in their RV when she's in that area. So that's working out real well. And so I see the future of our employment at the farm is that probably it's going to have living quarters on it for sure. I think that's going to be something that we're going to have in order to find somebody who is going to consider this like a real job, kind of a thing, real dedication for a year or so. And then with that kind of work, even at the store too, so many people are in transition that are awesome people, but they're in transition. So we're okay with hiring people for 3 or 6 months. And so I just ask them to we just have a full, very clear expectation on like when that time frame is. So I tell people, like the gal that we just hired, be like, I need you through May. Like, I don't care what happens mid-May, if you want to talk about staying or not, but like, I need you through mid-May. And that's only going to be like, really like 3 or 4 months or so of her working for me, which is fine. That's worth it for me to train her. And then she'll leave, and, we may keep in touch or not, but so we do ask for short stints of commitment. And I think that also helps too, to get people to agree to do these kind of, jobs, which are not common jobs. What we're doing is a little weird, right? And so we need to be flexible, with those people. And then, the other thing that we look for, Michael, is that, if I wanted to work with people that I didn't like, I'd go get a job.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so we need to hire people who we enjoy being around. I'm not talking about like going to get beers with them after work or being their best friend or anything like that. But like people that are like, can chat, can have a conversation, that are generally nice people, that are just kind of in a good mood, whatever, honest, sincere, the basics. Right. And so those are the folks that we need. And then also, they need to play nice in the sandbox, right? They need to, not engage in any silly pettiness. And so we'll flush that out extremely quick once we start smelling that. And so, yeah, that's what we're looking for, with the folks that we're hiring for sure.
And at the shop, it's usually ends up being a year or so that people work for us, for the most part, about a year and a half.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then, people have a great experience. I've got folks that worked for me, when I was in my young 20s and they were teenagers, and now they're parents, and we stay in touch. And so it's always, I like our methodology, real well. And then not to say that we've never fired anybody, and not to say that we've never had a bad experience. That does happen every now and then. But for the most part, those strategies have worked for us very well.
Awesome. We usually talk about marketing here, but I feel like we've kind of covered that the entire way. So we'll kind of like put a pin in that, skip that. Let's talk about new farmers, because you've been in business for a while. You haven't been doing this for necessarily super long, but I know along the way, you've seen a lot of people come and go. What do you feel that the biggest mistake beginning farmers make is?
Well, since when I opened up the store, just to let everybody know, I wanted to focus on like natural organic gardening and growing vegetables. So in 2003, I was definitely rubbing elbows with people who are doing urban gardens and things of that nature. And so, my number one observation of that is that young farmers even older farmers tend to they do two things. They bring a knife to a gunfight, and they let their ideology, rule their goal setting. What I mean by, knife to a gunfight, I've been having some discussions about shipping, doing the door, the drop offs, and then packaging came up, and a lot of people were telling me, just ask the customer to put an ice chest on their front porch. And I'm not asking a customer to put an ice chest on their front porch. That's not, Amazon is not going to ask a customer, to do that. And so,
it's like you can, that might be bonus, but like it's your responsibility to deliver your product.
So
I
saw that post, and you were talking about those freezer containers, not the freezer bags.
Yeah.
And
so it's like, one gentleman, and he has a very good point, and I agree with him. I hate using plastic. Like with our garden soil, we put our cubic foot bags go in brand new 4 mil poly bags, and I hate selling them, but like, Miracle Grow is going to sell theirs if I don't sell mine. And so it's just the nature of it. And so, I would rather, anyway, the gentleman said he didn't like to use a lot of packaging, and I totally agree with what he's saying, but that would be an example of how can you compete with a, what's the cow share? The
Crowd Cow or Butcher Box.
Yeah, how can you compete with a venture capital funded entity like those companies and say, I'm going to ask my customer to put an ice chest on the front porch? I mean, that would be like, you're not using all the tools in the toolbox, and you're definitely going to be outgunned, in that relationship, in that scenario. And so I think that is a big one.
And then related to that, like, how much do you want to swim upstream? And what battles do you really want to fight? Like, I dislike food waste. Well, food waste isn't really an issue. We don't have much waste at all. Plus we have pigs. But packaging, like, I don't like packaging either. Like, I want to be as low waste, zero waste as possible, but like within reason. Your customers that care about that so much are gonna probably buy from you in other ways than like the dropping it on their doorstep. But like the soccer mom in the suburb across the lake, like, if she's not buying from us now, but the way that I can get her to buy from us is by dropping it in a professional manner on her porch where her stuff isn't defrosting, and it doesn't require her to like remember as she's running out the door in the morning to put an ice chest out. Like, I want that. I don't want to let my own personal, like, concern about plastic to outweigh like our business succeeding and moving with the times,
and her getting started buying local, because we have to realize that, it's one of the things I created a long time ago when I started doing presentations. I created this grid of like the 5 stages of a customer. And on one side, it's, they're obviously McDonald's for every lunch, it's like my contractor, my excavator. They would be like, oh yeah, we're going to McDonald's down there for lunch. And they're coming back to then come, excavate for organic vegetable field. Dichotomy. And that's fine. But if I had, if I'm going to try to get them to even think about this, offering them tomatoes in a way that they're used to buying them is going to be the first step. Not saying, oh, you have to do all these things to get my super awesome tomatoes that, it's just not going to, they're going to be turned off, and they're going to be like, well, that guy was crazy. Right. So you can be so crazy, I think, especially when you're trying to reach brand new customers.
Totally. You can only swim upstream so much. So pick your battles. I think that
I mean, I would rather drop off, something that was on somebody's porch that was designed to go, next day FedEx, to where it's not going to thaw out on them. And after they have bought from us and like the product, and maybe they reordered, then you give them a call and be like, hey, would you like to work on reducing your waste or something to that effect? And then, you can put the ice chest on your front porch,
then when we deliver, we'll just unzip our thing, put your product in your ice chest, and take our bag right back with us.
Right. Yeah. So you're right. So up front, it's hard to do that, but later on, I think you can start working on that once it becomes a recurring customer. That's for sure. So yeah, and then the other part, to go along with the not bringing all the tools to your the challenge, so to speak, and being a little bit too ideology, having a too big of an ideology, is also lack of communication. I mean, it drives me nuts when because we're also doing business with the like 20 other farms right now, and it drives me nuts when they don't communicate with us, and so. Texting, we all have our tools, we've all got texting, emailing, phone calls, like there's no excuse not to communicate. But farmers are just notorious for being bad communicators, and you have just got to communicate. That is an absolute thing. And if you're not a good communicator, you need to find somebody who's going to do the communicating for you, because it's not going to work out. And so I think those are the major things for sure.
And just like under promise, over deliver, not the opposite. There's no better way to lose customers than, blaming the weather. Like, we all experienced the freeze last week, and everyone understands, but you gotta communicate. You know, you need to tell people in advance, like, we're not going to be delivering because XYZ, whatever. It's all fine, but you need to communicate.
Yeah, you can't expect them to know anything.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, they don't have to. Like, it's not their job to remind or anything. Yeah.
Talk about the mental game, because obviously as part of this, it's really challenging. I know you talked, Grant, you know, going back and living in your parents' basement or your parents' house. I don't know if it was the basement, but
it's in Louisiana, but the equivalent. Yeah. They do have a house in Alabama too, so he wasn't living with them the whole time, but still, the analogy still is apt. I don't know. I feel like this is your territory.
So Michael, you want to be, so ask that again. What was the specific question?
Yeah. So the specific question is the mental game for the first couple of seasons, you know, making it happen. You know, you're down to the last $10,000 in your bank account. I don't know if you ever hit that, but,
we hit well below that.
Yeah, Michael, I've been at the point where I filled up half a gas can of gas, you know what I mean? Because I didn't have enough cash on me. Yeah. So you know, in business, I've been there and done that. You know, and to be very serious about it, there's potential of going to very dark places when you start a new business, you know. And and I think that, you know, I mentioned that, you know, what my opinion is of things are hard, but having said that, you know, it is like, if you want to mentally challenge yourself in ways that you've never done that before, start a business. And it's,
you're looking at a guy who's got a business, decided to start a new business, and has 2 kids and 1 on the way. So
exactly right. Yeah. And so you know, going into business is you know, very difficult. You know, Justin Rose, he's got he's a videographer guy, does all the farm. You know, he put out a thing recently, like a week ago, and you know, he said a lot of personal stuff on there, and what they went through when they were starting up their deal. And you know, it really hit home with me. I mean, look, you will go through cycles of being depressed. You know, you will ask yourself, you know, when you put out your product, why family and friends are not buying from you. And not only are they not buying from you, but when they do talk to you about buying, they want a discount. You know, and then and it is very difficult. So like, the worst of the worst you're dealing with, you know, you're having all that negative self-talk, and you're telling yourself you're stupid and you made a bad decision. I mean, look, all that stuff happens. And if anybody said that didn't happen to them, they're lying, you know?
Yeah, that happened just 2 weeks ago for us. We were like, I was like my wife, I'm like, if this doesn't work, we're going to sell everything. We're going to buy an RV and we're going to move to Alaska or something like that. Yeah.
So that, you know, and really, you know, what keeps you going is just you know, you got to make hourly goals. You got to make daily goals. You got to make weekly goals. I mean, that literally is what's going to get you through those very, very difficult times. And so it's because it's overwhelming, you know, it's like, it's such a big task that you can get easily overwhelmed. And, you know, the only thing you could do on a day-by-day basis is be like, this is what I'm going to do today. And then you know, this is what I'm going to do on Monday. And I hope I'm going to live to see Tuesday. You know, that's what, you know, that's what it comes down to. So, yeah. So for people listening, you're going to go through the worst of the worst mentally, you know, for sure. You know, but you're going to come out at the other end, you know, stronger as a result. And, you know, your business may fail, and that's okay. And you know, that's going to give you so much information on whatever your next thing is going to be. And that could be a job or whatever. I mean, going through it, there's nothing like gaining knowledge, like going through it. I mean, you know, if you want to save money, like if somebody said, hey, Grant, here's $100,000 to go get an MBA, or I'm going to give you $100,000 to go blow on a business idea, I'd rather go blow it on a business idea.
Oh gosh, yes.
You know, because you're going to learn just so many things that that will never be able to be taught in the classroom. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're technically an urban farm within city limits, and so we've had to go get 2 development plans passed all the way through the city, and let's put it this way. It's not my favorite task during the day to go back and forth with the city manager about our lighting plan being a half candle off. So,
oh wow,
fantastic.
Yeah.
And do you feel, Grant, I mean, he is really good at this. I mean, do you just boil it down to like 1 foot in front of the other?
Yeah. It's 1 foot in front of the other, um, and then surrounding yourself with people that you can call or rely upon for advice. And that's one reason why I really like the farming community, because I mean I've had days to where I'm either texting or calling. We're in Louisiana, so I'm either texting, calling somebody in North Louisiana, Oklahoma, Virginia, Arkansas. Like we've have all these contacts. All of a sudden I get a text being like, hey, this has happened to me. Has this ever happened to you? It'd be like a pig thing. And that is just so cool. I mean, tell me, talk about.
The cool thing is that we now have phones that you can FaceTime and say, show a video of exactly what's going on. And you're like, oh yeah, this is exactly how you do that.
Exactly. And I think you get through those hard times by having that team, around you, sort of a thing. And for the people who don't have a team around you, when I was going through my hardest time, I personally just used books. Reading certain books were my way of coping with it. I would read Dale Carnegie stuff and other evening, just to kind of give me enough energy to get up the next morning and kind of get through it. And so there's all kinds of resources for you to kind of get through that really nasty growth cycle. That's for sure.
I would say too, I think like obviously having animals, you have no choice, but to take care of them.
And
then as for me, like as we've gone through like hard patches, having grown to have this steady customer base, it's like, you just have to do it. You just have to wash the eggs and deliver them. Just, there's just built-in things that force you to keep going. And the more that you go through the motions, then you can get out on the other side and have some perspective on it, I think. So
if you could pick one, what's your favorite farming tool?
Egg washer. That's the most relevant for me. What about you, Grant?
Man, I gotta tell you, with this putting in the infrastructure at the farm, man, I love PEX plumbing fixtures.
Okay. All right. So you're actually using PEX for all your bigger stuff too.
Yeah. So, keep in mind, we really don't freeze here. I mean, we may get a couple of freezing nights. So, we're running just, with the 60 acres now with the rotational grazing. I mean, we want to have plug-in points with water, like every couple 100 feet, you know what I mean? And so we're using 3/4 inch poly, you buy them in 100-foot, the black poly, buy them 100 or 500-foot rolls or whatever. But all your typical household PEX fitting, it fits all that stuff.
I did not realize that.
And so, like we had,
but just don't, I mean, people are like outraged probably that we don't have to bury our water lines.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Some parts of the country have to be like 8 feet or something.
I was talking to somebody and they were like getting nauseous about putting water lines. I'm like, what's the big deal? And they're like, well, we got to put it 8 feet down, the boss line. I go, oh my God. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. It's like a whole thing for us. We can basically lay it on top and kind of roughly buried eventually.
Yeah. When you're that far north, you should be putting your animals inside during the winter, probably.
Right.
Anyway.
So that, I mean, and so when a line breaks or something goofy happens, or if I just need to plug in and put a T in somewhere, I mean, it's not even cutting the water off, it's just cutting a pipe and putting a fixture on. And then so I got like a go bag of PEX fittings. So I can just grab it and go make a repair or whatever. So that modern plumbing has just been fantastic.
And what's the, where do you get those PEX? Do you have a specific online supplier you like to buy them from, or?
All the PEX stuff, Lowe's and Home Depot carry them.
And that's the best price you found?
Well, it's, I guess for the way that we buy them, they work out. I'm not buying big boxes at a time, but like, if I'm
but the PEX itself we buy from a local plumbing company.
The black poly and all that kind of stuff I buy from a plumbing supply house.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Right now, that's something like for the 3/4 inch black poly for the municipal pipe, it's like 30 cents.
Yeah.
Foot, and it's going up. It used to be like 22 cents or something like a year ago, but and then the PEX fittings aren't too bad. So whenever I'm making my routine, drops to a hardware store, I'm going to go, you know what, I'm going to grab some tea, get some elbows, just, while I'm in there. And that's kind of like how I buy that stuff. I find that pricing, I think, is comparable for the most part for
Gotcha.
ordering. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're in the vegetable world, we're dealing with a lot more water. So we're 2 inches is what we're dealing with for our pipe.
Yeah.
And that gets hard. It's just so hard to work with. I mean, like 3/4 inch pipe, I'm like, man, that's fun to work with.
Yeah.
And then, but the downfall of that, and we're doing pressurized water in the whole farm.
Yeah.
And then we actually have water service there, which is crazy. Like, we're one of the few places that a bunch of people right around us have wells. So we were able to
it's like rural water district, oddly.
Yeah, it was just kind of a strange water line that they ran. But our downfall will be, like, let's say when we get up to having like 30 finisher, steer, when we move them to a new paddock, we're going to have another water trough already filled with water. Because if we move them and they all go to drink at the same time, and I'm just setting that water trough up, it's not gonna, they're gonna end up fighting over the water and all that kind of stuff. So we are gonna have to have, multiple troughs just to be pre-filled, just a little bit thinking ahead. But that's the biggest disadvantage, to what we're doing with that 3/4 inch pipe. Yeah.
Where can people find out more about you and your work?
So our store is Laughing Buddha Nursery, and that's on Instagram and Facebook. And then our farm is Local Cooling Farms, like the opposite of global warming. So we have separate Instagram and Facebook for that. We kind of have everything going on at the farm and the animals and the behind the scenes, and then the products and stuff like that. And then our website is laughingbuddhanursery.com, and there's a farm section on there.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Cool. All right. Any final thoughts to wrap us up?
No, I think we covered a little bit of everything. Yeah. So I just tell all the other farmers out there, just keep doing your thing, keep networking with other farmers, and have some teamwork implemented, and you're going to be successful. You're going to do it. So.
And make sure you focus on the business.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
Well, thank you two so much. This has been a pleasure, and appreciate your time, and can't wait to air this with the audience.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
All right. Hey, Thriving Farmers. Next week on the podcast, I am interviewing Ed from Sustainable Bioresources, a specialty nursery in Hawaii, and they produce Hoodia and Moringa there. So there's 2 basically more tropical plants that they're working on doing breeding and trials around the world with. And Ed will share with us all about how they make that work and if Moringa is right for you.
So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer Podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.